This content is brought to you by Algorand, which is building the future of finance. Algorand is one of the leading projects in the crypto industry. It is getting significant adoption and investments. This content is also brought to you by TaxBit, which is the leading tax service provider in the crypto industry. I'm personally a TaxBit user. It makes it so easy to plug in my exchange accounts and calculate my crypto gains and losses. So if you'd like to learn more about Algorand and TaxBit, please visit the links in the description of the podcast and YouTube video. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Chris Swenor, who's the co-founder and CEO of Reach, which is a blockchain developer platform, and HumbleSwap, a new decentralized exchange coming soon to Algorand. Chris, great to have you on the show.
It's purely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Chris, you're building some cool things. Definitely want to hear about that. I'm a big Algorand fan. I'm an Algo token holder. So are many of my listeners and viewers. But let's start with your background, where you're from and where'd you grow up?
Oh, wow. So I grew up in Michigan. On west side of the Michigan. Lived there for a long time. And then I ended up moving over to Boston. And I've been here in Boston now for about, let's see, how long? About 20-ish years? Maybe, no, not that long. About 15 years. Yeah, maybe 13 to 15 years. I'm not sure exactly when I moved here.
And what did you do before founding or co-founding Reach and HumbleSwap?
Yeah, so I taught myself how to code when I was 13 years old, and I really fell in love with it. I spent a lot of time coding after school, and even convincing my high school like superintendents and teachers to let me create my own classes because I took every computer science class possible. And then as soon as high school hit, I decided to actually just start my career, because by the time that's high school hit, I was already coding for like 4 or 5 years. So I decided, why do I need to go to college when I've already been doing this? So let's just start. So I was a software engineer for about 10 years, so since 2000. And then I switched over to the product side and management side and entrepreneurship. I created a bunch of companies in like the SaaS space. Like I was been involved with a couple of companies that were acquired. Started my my journey into crypto a full time. All right. So I fell in love with crypto in about 2015 with the idea of the trust the state machine. So it took me about 2 years to figure out how I wanted to get in the space, but I knew I need to because I was extremely passionate about the potential of blockchain. And then early 2017, I jumped into blockchain full time by starting a scaling solution company. Raised a little bit of money, built out a prototype, and found out that there weren't enough developers to be able to keep the lights on, even if I sold the product to every single developer. So I realized at that point, the problem was not scaling. It is the problem, but not today's problem. But today's problem that needed to be solved is bringing more developers in space. And that's when I started Reach.
Now, you mentioned that you discovered Bitcoin in 2015. I'm always curious.
So I actually discovered Bitcoin in 2013, but I fell in love with blockchain in 2015. But 2013 is when I received my first Bitcoin.
Wow. And how did that come about? Was it a friend? Did you read on a forum?
Yeah. My friend was a jerk to me, or was trying to be a jerk to me. Joke's on him. So what happened is that I bought him lunch, bought him a burrito to be exact. And I was like, hey, you never paid me back for that. And then a week later, I got an email that says from Coinbase that says you received X amount of Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what this is. And the memo on it was burrito and seltzer water. I'm about as diamond hands as you possibly can get. And so I actually still have that Bitcoin. And every year I send my friend a copy of how much Bitcoin he sent me for back in 2013, trying to be a jerk to me.
Wow. Hopefully it was a few Bitcoin. I don't know, but that's pretty nice that you've held it so
It's
long.
the most expensive burrito I've ever eaten, I would just say,
Wow.
or that he's ever eaten. That's for sure.
Wow. I love hearing these stories of how folks first come across Bitcoin and crypto. That's awesome. I ask all my guests, what do you hold in your crypto portfolio?
I believe in a multi-chain future. So I do have a spread. Of course, I have Algo, Ethereum, Bitcoin. I have a little bit of Cardano even. I mean, pretty much I have a little bit of everything. I don't dabble with the meme coins. I don't have any of those. But pretty much any of the coins that have a strong team behind them and a potential future is where what coins I hold.
Awesome. I love folks who recognize that we are in a multi-chain world, and that's going to be how it's set up. There's not going to be one coin to rule them all, and there's going to be interoperability. Let's talk about Reach and
Sure.
the services, and maybe you can give us an overview and the mission and so forth.
Yeah. Like I said, back in 2017, I was building that scaling solution, and I discovered that what really needed to happen was bringing more developers in the space. So I did a couple of things. Number one, I started talking to the developers that weren't in the space, talking to developers that were in the space, find out why the number of developers in blockchain were measured in the thousands rather than the millions. And the things that I kept finding out were three major issues. Number one, blockchain development is too difficult. Traditional developers aren't used to writing at that low level, because when you're writing blockchain applications with, say, Teal or Solidity, what you're doing is you're building them state machine. And developers don't develop state machines. That's without getting too technical. That's just not what they're used to doing. So it's just much more difficult, much longer to develop things. The second thing is that developers were scared of the safety issues. Developers write bugs. This is a known fact. You will write a bug when you actually write an application. In blockchain, if you write a bug, you lose millions of dollars. So developers are like, you know what? I know that I write bugs, and I don't want that risk, because there's no backing up your database and just resetting everything. Your money's gone at that point. You got to call the FBI.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is that the crypto is actually too tribal. There's too many people that are maximalist, and they yell at you if you pick the wrong coin. If you do pick the wrong coin, there's a chance that coin doesn't succeed, and then you just wasted a lot of your time because all of the tech is proprietary. So those are the three major issues that we kept hearing. So what I did is I went and I looked at other major industries that started off as niche solutions and then became mainstream. So the two that I really focused on was the personal computer and the smartphone. Both of those things were niche, like not everybody had them. And then all of a sudden they became adopted. I mean, I bet you have a smartphone in your pocket right now. I mean, most people watching this have smartphones, right? Most people are watching this have computers. Obviously, you need a way to watch this. So how did that happen? And every single time, what brought it to mainstream was value add, a killer app. That's an application that was created with this technology that the rest of the world decided, I need this thing. Well, you can't really guarantee you're going to pick the next killer app. That's just not possible. If it was possible, VCs would invest in one company, and that's it. But they don't. They invest in 10 companies hoping one succeeds. So if you can't predict what the killer app is to make blockchain mainstream, the next thing is, how do you create a killer app? What is the catalyst for killer apps? And looking at these industries, the answer every single time was an operating system. Microsoft built DOS and created the basic programming language. Apple created iOS with the Objective-C language. What it was developer accessibility, making it so that any developer can be innovative themselves and build whatever is on their mind. And that is what creates killer apps, because it's a numbers game. So I looked at that and said, okay, well, I guess I need to build Apple or Microsoft for the blockchain. And So in 2019, September 2019, we created Reach with that goal, with the answer of how do we make blockchain development 100 times easier, not incrementally better, 100 times better, like marginally better than anything else. And the answer was to fully abstract away what blockchain development is, or completely change the paradigm. So it took us about a year. We launched the MVP in September of 2020. And what it came up with, and by the way, the only way this was possible because I partner up with my co-founder, Dr. Jay McCarthy, who is a computer science researcher for over 15 years, specializing in programming languages and compilers, pretty much the perfect person to tackle this problem with. And we came up with the idea to build a programming language that has a higher level of abstraction, so it's much faster and easier to write. Real world use case. We're launching the DEX, which you mentioned earlier, at the end of this month. The pool code, like the main gut of the actual application, is less than 300 lines of code. Compare that to the 2,000 to 3,000 plus lines of code that you would have to write if you didn't use Reach. So it's a 90% decrease in the number of lines of code that you have to write. So we made blockchain development exponentially easier and faster to actually write. The next thing that we did is fixing the safety aspect. Now, the safety aspect is, like I said, how do you prevent writing bugs? So we use this thing that was called formal methods or formal verification, that through the compilation process, we automatically, mathematically guarantee that your code will do what you expect in all potentialities. This is not testing. This is like testing on steroids. This is like NASA uses this, like hardware manufacturers where if there's a mistake, it's a multi-million-dollar mistake. People use formal methods, but traditionally to do formal methods requires mathematics PhDs and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and tons of time to get it done. We automatically generate the formal proofs through the compilation process. So a traditional developer has the power at their fingertips. And the final thing is we abstracted the blockchain away. So developers can learn one language and launch on any chain with just changing the configuration. So wow, that's what we did. So like I said, we launched the MVP in September of 2020. Since then, as of this morning, I think we're like 8 shy of 4,500 developers that have come on and built applications. This is not numbers in our Discord, number or Twitters. This is actually developers that have written applications and compiled them and built blockchain applications. And this includes about a dozen VC-backed startups. So it's not just people building hello worlds. It's actually legit customers.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it because you're making the process so much easier. You eliminated a lot of the roadblocks. And to confirm, you said that it's not specific to one blockchain. They can come on board, use the Reach platform to build on almost any blockchain.
Right. So far, it's any blockchain that we build a connector for. So far, we've done EVM, so all of the EVM chains, Algorand, and Conflux. And the next chain that we're doing is Cosmos. But our plan is to make it so that you can output to any chain with just a configuration change. Wow.
Now you mentioned, a lot of these folks are professionals. You mentioned the VCs. Could one noob who wants to explore, let's say a teenager, use your platform to start learning and to build a blockchain or some sort of application?
Our first or second hackathon was won by an 11-year-old.
Oh, wow.
So yes, I mean, obviously it was a smart 11-year-old that had previous knowledge coding. And we do recommend that, that you have some experience with traditional full stack applications. But if you are a full stack developer, you can actually learn Reach and build sophisticated applications like AMMs with about 4 weeks of learning. This is, by the way, it would take you at least a year of experience before you could actually be comfortable enough to build a custom application, or you have to be super, super smart. So what we've done is we made it so that the 10 million developers in the world could spend 4 weeks and learn reach and be able to launch a blockchain application, which is pretty exciting if I could be a little biased.
Yeah, that's a huge on ramp that you're building for these developers, and like you said, removing the roadblocks. That's amazing. Tell us about what's on the roadmap for Reach specifically for 2022. Right.
So 2022 is the year of growth for Reach. 2020, like I'm actually the amount of growth that we had in 2021 is actually pretty amazing because it wasn't full featured back then. 2022, we're getting to the point where any blockchain application can be written on Algorand. So we believe that, or on blockchain specifically. So we believe that the year 2022 is the year of growth, where we're focusing on learning materials, curriculum, boot camps, and just creating the tools for people can easily access and learn Reach anywhere they want. We do actually plan on by the end of the year releasing the enterprise version of Reach as well, which will add extra features for companies that like the Fortune 500 that plan on having a lot of values on a contract, so that they need extra safety and extra ease to make sure that they build safe contracts.
On that point of safety, your system and so forth, what precautions or steps are taken that if someone's using your platform to build these things, that's proprietary, and that maybe the idea of centralization and someone on the Reach's end from viewing that information and things like that.
Right.
If I'm articulating that well, I apologize.
I think what you're asking is, why is Reach safer? What are the things that Reach does that it makes it safer than writing by hand? Well, number one, because it's less line of codes, it's less chances of bugs. The more lines of codes that you write, the more chances of bugs you can write. So by having less, you have a much less by itself. But that's by far from it. When you hit compile, the compiler takes your code, turns it into a math problem, and then if you remember back in geometry where you actually proved the validity of an algorithm, like that, you're like, okay, rather than actually putting values in, you actually wrote out by hand why that algorithm is correct. That's kind of what like formal verification is, but instead of a simple equation, it turns your entire application into an equation and proves that that equation will do exactly as expect in every potential reality. So this is like a huge benefit for developers building. And then there's other added benefits, like the Reach front end verifies the contract that's communicating with is the exact contract that was created with that front end. So it's impossible for somebody to inject a bad contract on the back end as well. So there's several things that makes writing with your blockchain application with Reach exponentially better. And the best part about it is using Reach is free. So in my mind at this point, there is very little reason for any developer to not write with Reach if they actually care about their users' funds.
Got it. Awesome. Let's jump to HumbleSwap and what's being built there as far as the decentralized exchange. Give us the overview, the services, and things like that.
Yeah. So during our growth of Reach, one of the things that we notice is that we have a lot of blockchain knowledge, and we have access to one of the best tools, or if not the best tool for building applications. Why not create a Reach Labs? So we created Reach Labs with the idea of building consumer-facing products that allow us to take advantage of everything that we have and everything that we've learned to build best-in-class products. The first product that we're launching is the Humble DeFi Suite. And the first product of the Humble DeFi Suite is launching at the end of this month, knock on wood. That is a traditional decentralized exchange, an AMM. It's pretty boring, honestly. It is your traditional AMM swap. But the reason why we're actually launching this as it is so soon is because of the lack of decentralized exchanges currently on Algorand. Happily, that's going to change really quickly by all of the exchanges popping up. But we wanted to make sure that we set the foundation of the future. But this is when things start getting much more exciting. as like very shortly after we launch, we're going to launch limit orders in a decentralized way. So if people don't want to actually accept the current K value or the value of the swap, they can actually set the value that they want and forget it. And completely, this is a completely decentralized process. Walk away, and then somebody else can actually activate your order, and then you can receive your trade based off of the parameters you set. So this is a really cool feature that we're adding. Another features that's coming very soon is liquidity incentives. Which is a little too early to release the exciting part about how we're going to do it, but it's in a way that nobody else in crypto period has actually incentivized liquidity. That also figured out how to prevent liquidity leeches or loyalty leeches for the people that actually just provide liquidity long enough until they receive the reward and run away. So this feature is coming, and this right here I think will really put Humble on the map of not just on the Algorand space, but on DeFi in general, because once again, nobody else has done something like this. But of course, like I said, this is the entire DeFi suite. So the DAO is going to be released, and there's going to be more and more features that are continuing to come out. The idea of Humble is to be DeFi for everyone. And that ranges from everybody from your traditional user. We're actually implementing a help desk with a live chat to answer questions, which surprises me. And a lot of people haven't done this, but if you're DeFi curious and you just want to ask simple questions, we're providing a chat box on the screen to actually have live conversations to answer those questions. And then on the back end, because of all of the safety of Humble and being by far the safest developed DeFi application, we hope to attract the institutions to make sure that we have a strong liquidity base as well. So we really are building that DeFi for everyone. That's the back end, the foundation provides tools for the institutions, and on the front end provides a great user experience for everybody.
Got it. Excited to see hear about the liquidity incentives that are coming. And are there any?
I'll give you one bit more minute alpha.
Sure.
This liquidity incentive will not only actually is a cool way to incentivize, but it creates an entire new layer of DeFi primitive. That's going to be really exciting. That's enough.
And I'm assuming this will be accessible to all Algo token holders and who can participate, right?
It's DeFi, baby. I mean, the idea is that we will only ever build things in a decentralized way, which means permissionless, means that you don't need to ask me for permission to use any of the tools that we build. You put a gun to my head and say, stop this, I won't be able to, because I believe that decentralization shouldn't have any layer of centralization.
For sure. And I know you covered a lot there. Anything else that you want to highlight for 2022, or did you kind of touch on everything for now?
The reason why we called it Reach Labs and not Humble Labs is because there are several products that are coming out of Reach Labs that we spoke about Humble already, but there's a project right now that's called Game Jam. That is an entire gaming ecosystem that is based around the idea of interoperable assets. We actually brought in a few people from Blizzard to actually run that project, and we already have, I think we're at 4 AAA and AA games that are going to integrate that. Once again, it's a little too early to make that announcement of even the true name of what it is, but that's going to be a very big deal in the gaming space. And that's, of course, built on Algorand. And then the final project that we'll probably release this year is the Monarch protocol. And the Monarch protocol is a DAO of DAOs that creates, instead of actually governance tokens to actually manage the DAO, it turns NFTs into the voting vehicle. So that allows for NFT holders that are part of communities can use the NFT itself to vote on DAO spending and proposals and things of that sort. So those are the 3 projects that are coming out of Reach Labs, and every single one of them has extreme potential.
Wow, that is exciting, and certainly intrigued by the Blizzard and gaming items that you guys are working on.
Yeah. Me,
Very
me
cool.
too. I'm a huge gamer, by the way. This is the reason why we did this in the first place, is because I was fed up with the current gaming industry, and I didn't want to build a blockchain gaming ecosystem. I truly wanted to build a gaming ecosystem that would rival Steam, and I think we're going to do that.
Very cool. Well, we'll have to have you back on when those things come to fruition.
Yeah,
Let's talk.
probably like I'd say 6 to 8 weeks away from the actual big announcement for Game Jam.
Awesome. All right, we'll schedule something offline there to talk more about that.
For sure.
Let's switch to the crypto market at large. Obviously
Yeah.
you discovered Bitcoin in the early days. Your friends
Right.
sending some Bitcoin for your burrito, for the burritos and the drinks and so forth. What are your thoughts on how Bitcoin and the crypto market have grown since 2013, 2015? We're just seeing a new level of adoption with corporates, countries making Bitcoin legal tender, Bitcoin mining happening in the United States. What are your thoughts on the growth and things that are happening?
Inevitability. I knew that back in 2013, I knew there was special and it would grow. 2015, I knew there'd be nothing that stops it. Like the fun part about this is like we feel like it's growing fast right now, but the truth is like we are. I know people say that we're so still early, but it's very true. We're still actually in the innovators portion of the growth curve. And it feels like it's later than it is because, I mean, $1 trillion is a lot of money. But when you look at the entire world potential, we're talking about lots and lots of more room for growth. And even though that's everything feels like it's big, we haven't seen anything yet. I truly believe blockchain will be fully adopted by the world, not only for financial reasons, but also many of the just value transfer in general. So blockchain is by far the biggest and best innovation of my entire lifetime, which includes the internet. And so what that means is I believe the blockchain will be much bigger than the internet is today.
Yeah, for sure. I think we as crypto enthusiasts, we get so excited about the tokens, the value, and the adoption we're seeing, but blockchain itself will go into voting and healthcare and all industries and aspects of life.
Yeah.
And I think I know sometimes they're maximalists are like, it's not Bitcoin, it's not blockchain, it's Bitcoin. It's like, okay, but the technology is going to be adopted in different ways.
Right. I mean, it's there's like this is the only industry that I know of incentivizes maximalism, which makes the industry toxic. So like you hear way too much toxicity in general and less open-mindedness because people are incentivized not to have an open mind. If they go deep in a certain coin, they need to cram that, like it's everything looks like a nail if all you have is a hammer, right? And that's very much what it is that the Bitcoin maximalists look at everything and it's like, well, Bitcoin's my hammer, everything must be a nail, Bitcoin's everything. And that's just not the truth. There's many other chains out there that do things way better than Bitcoin does. And, there's chains out there that do better things than the other ones do. This is why I believe in the multi-chain world. For example, Algorand is an amazing development platform. It's has high throughput, transactions per second. It's got fast finality. It's got low fees, and it's actually decentralized. Building on a platform like this has way more benefits than building on something like Bitcoin. That Bitcoin script is one of the most restrictive languages that you possibly could have. So like I said, there's room for new chains like Algorand. But yeah, I think there's strengths all across the world in all the different chains.
For sure. Let's talk about U.S. crypto regulations. So we're seeing some progress for sure. And like you said, we are still maybe in that innovators progress, right? Yeah. It's like dual full. I don't know. It's a double-edged sword or whatever analogy I can make here. But you have the infrastructure bill debacle. You have Gary Gensler and the SEC. But yet you have more members of Congress buying Bitcoin and more becoming advocates of it. So you have this like dichotomy happening, but we seem to be moving in the right direction because maybe the incumbents are fighting harder now, but they can't stop it. What are your thoughts, and do you see us getting it right eventually?
I've got a lot of thoughts, honestly. But I'll try to distill it into like, to be very specific. I personally, I'm not a huge fan of regulation. I feel like regulation adds a lot of overhead, which ends up stifling innovation. Just like this is a fact. I believe that regulation can be good for global adoption as well, though. But as long as it's not heavy-handed, it needs to be delicate. But what Congress tend to do is take existing regulations and try to apply them to new things. And crypto is not like anything else that has ever existed. And if they try to actually apply existing regulation to crypto, it's going to chase very smart people out of the United States. And that's what makes me sad, is that I personally, the thing that I truly care about is building amazing product that adds true value to the world. If regulation gets in the way of that, that makes me sad.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it can't be heavy-handed. It has to be light touch, and hopefully they're not trying to, like you said, use the existing framework and applying it to crypto. I feel that there needs to be a complete overhaul of some of these things. And maybe, look, we've heard Biden's executive orders coming soon. Maybe that is something. He gives the mandate for these different regulatory bodies to update. I don't know, but we'll have.
I've been in this space for a long time. People are scared of new things everywhere. So I don't have high hopes that the regulation that comes down will be really great, just because how new crypto is, and new people are scared of new things, and people tend to hit things with hammer that they're scared of. So I'm keeping an open mind. I'm excited, but guess what? I'm not going to stop building. Like, you can build whatever regulations. I want to keep building. I want to build and actually make the world a better place. I believe that over time, regulation will figure itself out and allow for true value to help the people of the country, because that's what regulation should do. Regulation isn't there to stifle innovation. Regulation is to create safe places or safe markets for their users and help. And I believe that given enough time, the people in Congress are smart enough, and with the correct amount of lobbying from the right people that do know what's going on, the regulation will iron itself out, and it will be the right thing. I just hope it happens faster than sooner than later.
For sure. What are your thoughts on, since we were just talking about it, with blockchains being adopted, central banks around the globe, including the United States, they're building their CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. So they're putting the fiat on the blockchain, tokenizing it. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's going to be complementary to the crypto market?
Good for them. They need to figure out some way to compete. Right now, cryptocurrency is better in many, many ways than centralized fiat. So what CBDCs do is incrementally makes fiat better by making the fiat programmable. Still has all of the same problems of fiat, so I don't think that it will hurt crypto by any means. But at best, I think what it'll make is it easier to be interoperable with the crypto systems. So I think it's complementary. I think that's I worry, and I know this for a fact. What will happen is that a country will create a CBDC and try to then outlaw cryptocurrency because they don't want a competitor to it. That won't work. But that's what we're going to start seeing, and you'll start seeing that it's going to be a pain, but we'll get through that as well. And then eventually they're going to be complementary.
For sure. I think we're starting to see China. They seem like they want to do that with the digital yuan. Start to ban other cryptos.
They won't be the last.
Yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts on the boom of the NFT market and the Metaverse and these branches off of the crypto market?
I have a lot of thoughts about this as well. So NFTs are not what people think they are. You do not so I did an entire hour-long rant on my podcast about NFTs in general and what they really are. So I'll see if I can actually condense it as little as I possibly can. So NFTs are self-sovereign ownership. They aren't assets themselves, and they are a on-chain, immutable ledger of ownership of a thing. It just so happens that most of the NFTs right now are of JPEGs. When you buy an NFT, you're not actually buying the JPEG, you're buying the ownership of the JPEG, and what the ownership, what the utility of the ownership of that JPEG matters. A lot of people, as soon as I hear someone say, "Oh, I can right-click save as your NFT," that instantly tells me you don't understand what an NFT is, right? Because I never bought that thing that you right-click saved as is. I bought the ownership of it. And you can right-click and save as a Bored Ape, but you can't get into the community of owning a Bored Ape by having that image. That image is one of the least important parts of what an NFT is, and that's the ownership.
Yeah.
So when people start thinking that NFTs is a data entry of an ownership of a thing, you can start really thinking about what are the potential of NFTs. And when you think of them as a self-sovereign modular piece of ownership, you can start programming rules around ownership and around transfer. And then by doing that, and you can realize that you lower the overhead of the verification of those things, and that they can happen autonomously without a verifier. And now we create entire new industries that never were able to exist before because of NFTs. And once again, not because of the pretty JPEG that is attached. It's the functionality of the primitive itself. Now, to kind of dip over to the metaverse, this is another hot topic that I also don't believe people understand what the metaverse really is. When people hear metaverse, what they hear is a virtual world where you own NFTs that you can have in that virtual world. That's not the metaverse. It's an easy way to explain the metaverse, but there's a nuance there. That the metaverse is more like a multiverse than a universe. And the idea is a central source of truth of ownership that is interoperable with other dimensions of the metaverse. Now, dimensions of the metaverse aren't other virtual worlds. It can be anything. Like, I'll give you an example to really understand it. Say you buy a Tesla on the Earth metaverse, because the Earth itself is a metaverse. I receive an NFT of ownership of that Tesla. Now this NFT represents the ownership of that physical car. But I also, because of the same NFT, I have a digital image that I can wear on my smartwatch. The smartwatch is another dimension of the metaverse. This smart NFT or this NFT also gives me ownership to a digital Tesla that I can drive around in a digital world metaverse. And then on Call of Duty, the same NFT and then Call of Duty metaverse, I can now have the Tesla skin on my gun. So the idea of the metaverse is not a single universe that I walk around in virtual reality. It's the idea of universal ownership of a thing that is contextually different depending on the dimension that I'm showing ownership of that thing.
Yeah, that's a very thought out way, an explanation of it, to your point, and how that ownership jumps into the different multiverse, as you mentioned. That's pretty cool. And on the note of NFTs, I just recently interviewed the CEO of Proppy, and they're using NFTs for selling actual real world properties. And to your point, not so much any type of JPEG or document, but the ownership encrypted.
It's the ownership of a thing. Yeah. And the really cool thing is that with the idea of the metaverse, you buying that property that is represented on an NFT, that same NFT can actually contextually be displayed as an image on your smartwatch, or some other dimension can actually do something different with the ownership of the NFT. So that's the best part about NFTs is that it's not, you're not buying the asset, you're buying the ownership of a thing. And that is the true special thing about NFTs.
For sure. Let's hit the wrap-up questions here. Since we're on the metaverse topic, I know you gave a very detailed and holistic view of the metaverse, but if you were to create your own metaverse, what would the theme be? Where Chris jumps into some place that he just wants to hang out by himself or explore? What would the theme be?
So I would change the question to what if I were to create my own dimension of the metaverse, what would it be? Um, and I would say that's like me personally, I don't currently until the VR really makes it feel like I am in that place. I like being in the real world. But I believe once again, the real world is a dimension of the metaverse.
Sure.
So my choice of dimension of the metaverse is the real world because I still like to touch, feel, have all my senses in this thing. And I think I'm not dismissing the VR space because I've had fun with my, Beat Sabers and things of that sort. But it's not quite to the point where I feel like I'm fully immersed. But once that happens, then, I'll be everywhere. I'll change my metaverse, all the time because I want to be everywhere at the same time.
For sure. Yeah. We still haven't gotten there, to still, I know it looks cartoonish in certain ways and all that. We need some real looking and feeling.
We'll get there though. We'll get there.
All right, some rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
Chicago deep dish pizza.
Nice. Favorite musician or band?
I don't listen to music.
You don't listen to music?
There's actually there's a small subset of people in the world, which I'm one of them, that don't emotionally connect to music. I can appreciate music for the skill, but I don't have that emotional connection to music. So I listen to audiobooks instead.
Favorite movie?
It probably still has to be The Dark Knight. Such a well done movie.
For sure. One of my favorites. Favorite book?
I'd probably say pretty much anything written by Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson is the best author that has ever lived.
And finally, what do you do for fun as far as a hobby and things like that?
I create crypto companies.
Should have figured that was going to be the answer. Chris, pleasure chatting with you, and certainly want to have you back on as things get released and updated on HumbleSwap and Reach and so forth. But thank you for joining me today.
Purely my pleasure. Thank you so much. And I look forward to coming back and talking about the new things that we build.